I was looking forward to this topic the most because I feel like I got a lot to say here. Now, before I do, when this happened and I got the update, it shocked the hell out of me. Okay, I'm not saying that it's a wrong move or not. We'll get there, but I'm just saying that it shocked me. Okay, like I was not expecting this early, and immediately the first thing that ran to my mind, and there was a lot, was the comment that Tom Brady made on Stephen A. Smith's podcast that I would like to play right now, and then I will respond.
Programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately, like at Michigan, for me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years, I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college. That was development. Then I went to New England, and I was developed by Coach Belichick and the offensive staff there. I didn't start my first year. I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early. But the reality is the only reason why they are is because we dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. It used to be thought of at a higher level. We used to spend hours and hours in the offseason and training camp trying to be a little bit better than next year. But I think what happens is it discourages the coaches from going to deep levels because they realize the players don't have the opportunity to go to a deep level, so they're just going to teach them where they're at.
All right, now let me get into this. I think a situation that we have here right now is field development. And sure, could Bryce Young be the next Jamarcus Russell or worse? Sure, absolutely. But I think it's too early to try to tell that and try to, look at it from that angle. Because when you look at the history of the NFL, okay, you look at guys like Drew Brees. Once upon a time, folks, want to give you a history lesson here. I don't have my cousin Fred on the show to do that for you because I'm pretty sure that would be an angle he would take. Now I'm going to take a page out of Fred's book and where I think he would go. Once upon a time, Drew Brees was benched after a 1-7 start in 2003, had 12 INTs to 9 touchdowns. Once upon a time, Kurt Warner started 0-6 as a starter in 2002 on the Rams, went to another franchise in the Giants, ended up on the Cardinals, and led them to a Super Bowl 6 years later. Once upon a time, and this is not too long ago, just a couple years ago, okay, Geno Smith rode the bench for 10 years, okay, before getting the opportunity to be a QB1 and lead his team to the playoffs, which he did, earning himself a contract, okay? Once upon a time, last year, to be exact, Zach, Baker Mayfield, okay, was benched by the same team after a 1-4 start, got cut by week 13, and he went to the Rams, and he ended up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he had his best year last year, led them to the playoffs, won a playoff game, and they're 2-0 right now. Okay, once upon a time, there was a guy named Old Man Sam Darnold, okay, who was also, ironically, on this very team, okay, got benched, didn't even win the job against Baker Mayfield, okay, goes to the 49ers, sit for a year, like we care, then he gets a gig on the Vikings, and let me check, their record is 2-0 right now, okay? My point being is that this is not an obituary as much as we want to be overdramatic. It's not. We don't know that. We don't have no evidence. It could be, but we don't know. Maybe Bryce Young has to travel. Maybe he has to sit with the play sheet and go like this, okay? Or maybe he has to go to another team and sit for a year. Maybe he has to link up with a Shanahan, with a McVay, with a LaFleur for a year. But no, we are not capping ceilings. You remember when you thought Jordan Love couldn't play ball? You remember that, Zach? He didn't even dress. And we was, oh my God, it's a bust pick. No, it wasn't. Not at all. Okay. So I want to go back to Tom Brady real quick. Then I'm going to pass the mic to you. But you have the flip side to it. which is the development side. And I feel that I made this point a couple of times on this show with Zach on, with Zay on, and it just flew over your heads. Nobody responded to it. I don't even know if y'all agree with it or even understand it, but I'm going to reiterate it. Okay. The guys, the quarterbacks in today's game are not as smart as the quarterbacks in Tom Brady's era. And a lot of that has to do with exactly what Tom Brady said in that video. Okay. And that's why I mention it. You know, when we talk about Mahomes and it's Mahomes league, I'm like, yeah, it might as well be. He's in a situation with an old school coach that know how to develop a quarterback. Clearly, he got to 3, 4 straight NFC championship games with bums, won games with a game manager in a playoff game. Clearly, he knows what to do, and he's in that situation. But look at these other guys that's getting paid, getting contracts. What are they doing? Okay. No, these guys are not as smarter as those guys in Tom Brady era when you had the Big Ben, when you had the Eli, when you had the Drew Brees. Okay. And that's where we are today. And Bryce Young is another example.
So let me ask you this. I think you made some good points, but the main question I had with this Bryce Young situation, like, do you think this is the right decision by the Panthers? Like, did you agree with their move to bench him or no?
I do. And the reason why, first of all, last year, he should have haven't even started. Okay. And I said this on the mic. Zay laughed at it, didn't agree with it. It is what it is. They shouldn't even have named him the starting quarterback before training camp, which is what they did last year. Terrible. I already knew the development was shot back then. Expectations you're putting on this guy. Caleb didn't even get the job until, he was announced. Even though they knew it in their minds, they just didn't say nothing. You got to earn that, boy. Okay, rookie. All right, you got to earn that. No, they gave it to him. Bad development already. Okay. Then he was getting decked in the preseason last year. No, we're going to still throw him out there because, we want to show off our new toy. We don't want to have him on a daggone shelf. Okay. So, yeah, his development was shot last year. And this year, clearly, entered some of that, botched development came into this year. And I understand that Dave Canales did a good job with Baker Mayfield. And I think he would do a good job with Dalton or whoever because I do believe in his play call. But Bryce Young was not playing good. Clearly, frustration on the team with Thielen and Deontay Johnson losing the locker room, even though Thielen came out and tried to be more supportive. He's a class act, obviously. He's not Shedeur Sanders going to call out his guys, right? But at the end of the day, yes, I do agree with it because you don't want to lose the locker room. And it's a tough thing to do, a pill to swallow when you invested so much in a guy like that. We saw how the Jets handled their situation with Zach Wilson, knowing that the inevitable was coming, but still, Robert Saleh, the puppet master he is, decided to still roll with that guy, wasting a good defense. The Panthers said, no, we are not going to do that. We are going to give Andy Dalton the gig because he gives us the best chance to win next week and the week after.
Okay, so my number one biggest takeaway from this news, and I said this as a take for 99 a few weeks back, and even though, look, Caleb Williams hasn't really gotten off to the best start in his NFL career, we're going to hit that next topic, but that trade that the Panthers made to go get Bryce Young in the number one pick with the Bears, like that, we're going to look back on that as just an all-time fleece, and really, I think a deal that really just sets this franchise back for a really long time, and I think this franchise doesn't deserve any bit of the benefit of the doubt because we forget when that trade was first made, all of the reports coming out of Carolina was they made that trade because they wanted to draft CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. And that made a lot of sense because if you look at Frank Reich and his history of the quarterbacks he's worked with in the past, they're bigger guys with strong arms like Carson Wentz, like Phillip Rivers, guys like that. And Bryce Young is small. He's the opposite of that. So I think the Bryce Young era in Carolina was really destined to fail from the beginning because his coach didn't even want to draft him. His first coach literally wanted to draft CJ Stroud, but their owner said, nope, I watched Bryce Young at Alabama. He's the guy I want, and we're going to take him with the number one overall pick. So I do think that the Bryce Young era was destined to fail in Carolina from the beginning, but I'm not going to lie. I was also the same one that hopped on this mic throughout the offseason and said, okay, I like the Dave Canales hire. I like trading for Deontay Johnson. I like drafting Xavier Legette. I like Miles Sanders. I like Jonathan Brooks. I was never expecting Bryce Young, after watching him last year, to be better than CJ Stroud and live up to the hype of being the number one pick. But I at least expected him to be better. And this news, as you said, is shocking because I thought that Dave Canales, the reason why he was hired and his number one and only goal was to fix Bryce Young, right? Like, that's why he was hired. And as bad as Bryce Young looked throughout the first 2 games, I'm pretty shocked that they're just pulling the plug on this experiment right away after those 2 games. And I'm wondering, whose decision was it to bench Bryce Young? I think this is so key and so important in this because, look, I don't know if Dave Canales really wanted to do this. He was hired to fix Bryce Young. He even said at his press conference that Bryce Young, being the Panthers quarterback, is a big reason why he took this job. And I don't know if he was going to get hired by anyone else, but if you're Canales, you're a younger coach that is kind of burst onto the scene out of nowhere, and you have the opportunity to work with the former number 1 overall pick after just 1 year, like, you're going to take that every time. But, Will, to me, like, this kind of reeks of a panic move by the owner who just got so tired of watching Bryce Young just fail game after game. And I get that. But my question is, like, what are you trying to accomplish if you're starting Andy Dalton? Is the offense going to look better? Sure. Is the team going to look more competitive? Sure. But I'm just surprised that after giving up as much as they did to go get this guy with that trade for Chicago, they're pulling the plug this quickly. Was it probably going to fail anyway? Yeah. But you said it. You want to see Bryce Young in a better situation. Like, I'm just shocked that they made this move this early because they're basically admitting that trade they made with Chicago is already just an abject disaster, which we all know it is. But what are you trying to do with Andy Dalton? Even if the offense looks better, which it might, you're out. You're done. You're 0-2 and your season's over. Like what is the point?
I mean, it's hard for me to argue with that angle. Just looking at it long term, I'm not sure if they have a plan for long term, because if they do, how does starting Andy Dalton benefit that long term plan? Because I would assume, and we all assume in any sport, when you're thinking long term and no longer short term, you start to lose games or tank, or you don't want to win games right now because you want to find that transcendent player, in this case a quarterback, to draft and develop the right way. And I'm not sure if they win games, if that's going to accomplish that. Now, I'm not even sure they're going to win games, number one. Now, credit to Andy Dalton, the 1 game you played for this team in Bryce Young's absence last year, he had 300 yards for what it's worth. However, it's not a guarantee they're going to win games. Maybe they win a few with Andy Dalton. He has veteranship. But what does that accomplish on the back end? What are you trying to accomplish? What is the goal? Ultimately. And if the goal is to replace Bryce Young, you might as well continue to play Bryce Young because he's helping you replace Bryce Young, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I agree with you there. But I think from the morale of the locker room, and to go back to your question, ultimately, who made this decision? Dave Canales said it was him. Now, maybe that's a show to protect the owner and how bad he looks. Maybe that is. Maybe he wanted to do that. I don't know. That's always going to be he said, she said, but he took ownership of that. So I kind of got to take it at face value unless I'm proven otherwise.
Let me ask you this, bro. Okay, this owner, David Tepper, a guy that, he's only owned the team for a couple years. But keep in mind, this guy, Frank Reich, wanted to draft CJ Stroud when they made that trade.
Yep.
But David Tepper butt in and said, no, we're drafting Bryce Young, and we're going to give up a ton of capital and assets to do that. So he did that, right? Dave Canales has been this team's coach for 2 games. Again, the reason why he was hired was because they wanted him to be the guy to try and fix Bryce Young's career and make him look better. And then after, I just don't think Dave Canales has the juice in this organization to overrule Tepper. Like, Tepper gave up a lot of this team's future to go get this guy. I don't think Dave Canales has enough power yet, after only being the coach for 2 games, to say, you know what, owner? Nah, we're going to bench the guy that you gave up all this capital for because he's that bad. This reeks of a panic move by the owner, and that's why my overarching take from this whole scenario is that the Panthers they are in the worst position of any team in the entire NFL right now because their owner is just an abomination. And when that's the case, you just don't have a lot of hope. And I just think we're going to look back on not only the trade, but the decision to draft Bryce Young when Frank Reich didn't even want him. That decision is going to cost this team and set them back for a really long time.
I mean, look, it's hard for me. I'm not going to go with that theory. Now, who do I think made the call is irrelevant. Dave Canales took ownership of that. It kind of reminds me of Brian Flores not wanting Tua from the beginning. He wanted Justin Herbert, and the owner made him draft Tua. And after they drafted Tua, he wanted to bench him. He did at various moments because he didn't clearly want him, and that shot his confidence. Maybe the situation is sort of like that.
I think it is. Like, bro, Canales said at his introductory press conference, like, I'm intrigued by Bryce. And I believe him. Like, I'm intrigued by Bryce Young. I want to be the guy that ends up turning his career around. And I just have a hard time.
But he didn't. Through two games, he wasn't able to do it. He wasn't able to do it in 2 games. And this is not the NBA. It's not 82 games. It's not 82 games that you have to figure things out, unfortunately. 0-2, your season is almost over.
I mean, it is over.
Basically, I mean, it was over from the beginning. This guy is not ready right now. I'm not calling him the B word. I did a video yesterday. I didn't call him the B word. I'm like, should we? Should I? Should you? Right? I threw that out there because I know people are going to react to that, but I didn't call him the B word. I'm not going to call him that right now. It's too early after the examples that I gave. But the reality of the situation is, through 2 games, he's not good, and it's not happening. Now, whether he could be good later, that's another situation. We'll have time to figure that out when that time comes. But as of right now, he did not play good. As of right now, the locker room was clearly frustrated. And as a coach, you don't want to lose the locker room. Because if you lose the locker room, then where's your backing when it comes to your job security? You have none. Because guys is not going to want to vouch for you. So at the end of the day, I mean, you want to be here longer than Bryce Young if you're Dave Canales, right? All right, then you got to show it. Make the tough calls. This was one of them, and he made it, and we got to see if he made the right choice.
Man, it's just crazy that we're already talking about this guy's job security when he's only coached 2 games. He's been the team's coach for 2 games, and we're already talking about his job security.
Now, I'm just saying in the long haul, if you lose the locker room, then you got no backing. So when the crowd gets antsy and panic moves happen, I mean, we didn't think Brian Flores, I know I compared him, but we didn't think he was going to lose his job. He won 6 straight games. And he did. Owners get antsy. Bill Belichick is on the daggone market, bruh. Okay, Bill Belichick is on the market. You predicted Bill Belichick to coach this team, if I'm not mistaken. Did you, Zach?
I did not.
I'm throwing false theories out there. Maybe I am. I think you did. Maybe you don't remember. But that's neither here nor there.
No, I was Eagles or Cowboys for Belichick.
Okay, then maybe I think it was Zay or somebody. Or maybe I'm just hearing things. I got to get more sleep. But anyway, Bill Belichick is available, He's sitting there. He want to coach. If you're David Tepper and Bill Belichick says, I want to come here and coach and lay down my foundation, I don't know why he would, but Bill Belichick don't care. He believe in his coaching. Clearly, he rolled Mac Jones and all that. Dave Canales or Bill Belichick, by Dave Canales. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure, my point being, I know I get lost in the sauce sometimes. My point being is that if you're Dave Canales, you want to make sure you keep the locker room. You do not want to lose the locker room. And I think they was losing the locker room with Bryce Young's struggling 2 weeks thus far.
One last thought I'll say on Young. I do think there is a chance he could go to a better situation and at least be a little bit improved. But man, first of all, when I watched him these first 2 games, his confidence just looked completely shot. Didn't really know what he wanted to do with the ball, where the ball was going. And it's unfortunate too, because the Panthers offensive line, which was a concern going into the season, I actually thought they've played better. The weapons are better. And the size, man, the size. I just don't know if you're like 5'9", 5'10", if you're going to be able to play in the NFL, especially, he's not like a lengthy guy either. Like, he's just pretty skinny. I think he's had some trouble seeing over his lineman's head. And man, again, I just think we're going to look back on that decision. Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. The trade is one thing, but getting the pick wrong is another. I just think the Panthers, of any team, any franchise in the NFL right now, that includes the Giants, there are a lot of other teams that are in some pretty tough spots right now. The Patriots, Yeah, the Panthers are by far and away in the worst position right now, and the future is bleak for this team. There's no doubt about it.
And this is my last point. I mean, this is another example, and I hate to say it, I was never a fan of this guy, but I kind of gained a little bit, I won't say respect, but I would say I'm not looking to trash this dude anymore until he gives me another reason to. So far, he's not. I got to give him credit. This is another example of the post Baker Mayfield apocalypse. We saw what happened with the Browns. They wanted to move on from him. They gave Deshaun Watson $230 fully million guaranteed. He has not lived up to it. All right. You look at the Panthers. They had Baker Mayfield on this roster. He's no longer there, and we no longer care. They're irrelevant. They're bad. Okay. They can't figure out the quarterback situation. So this is another example of a Baker Mayfield post apocalypse. All right, Zach, we're gonna go to halftime here. There's a lot of noise in my background. We're gonna go to halftime here, and when we come back from halftime, we are gonna move on to topic number 3. Make sure y'all keep it locked, stick around because it's going down.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.